The cigarette touched my skin before I could pull away. I screamed, stumbling backward as the investor grabbed my wrist, holding it in place. The smell of burning flesh filled the small conference room, and tears blurred my vision as pain radiated up my arm. He pressed the glowing ember harder against the back of my hand, his wine-stained breath hot against my face. That's what happens when little assistants forget their place, Theodore Krantz hissed, finally releasing me. I cradled my hand against my chest, biting my lips so hard I tasted blood. The burn was already blistering, angry and red against my pale skin. Now get me another scotch, and this time make sure it's the 18-year, not the 12. Are you really so incompetent you can't tell the difference? My voice came out as a whisper. Mr. Ashford specifically said no one gets the 18-year reserve. Do I look like I care what Julian Ashford specifically said? Theodore Krantz was a mountain of a man, 6'4" with silver hair, and a suit that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. He was also the single largest investor in Ashford Enterprises, holding 23% of the company's shares, which meant he thought he could do whatever he wanted. You're going to get me that scotch, or I'm going to make sure your boss knows exactly how useless his new executive assistant really is. I'd been working for Julian Ashford for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of 16-hour days, learning the ins and outs of a tech empire worth billions, trying to prove I deserved this position despite being 28, with only 5 years of corporate experience. Everyone had questioned Julian's choice to hire me. His previous assistant had been with him for 12 years before retiring. I was young, relatively inexperienced, and apparently made an easy target. I'll get you the 12-year scotch, sir, I managed, my hand throbbing with every heartbeat. That's what's available for guests. Theodore's face darkened. Before I could react, he swept his arm across the conference table, sending glasses and bottles crashing to the floor. Crystal shattered, amber liquid spreading across the white carpet like blood. Then I guess you'll be on your hands and knees cleaning this up, won't you? He stepped closer, backing me against the wall. Unless you'd like to explain to Mr. Ashford why his most important investor walked out of this meeting because his assistant couldn't follow simple instructions. The conference room door opened. Julian Ashford stood in the doorway, his gray eyes taking in the scene with an expression I couldn't read. He was 37, tall and lean in a charcoal suit that looked effortless, despite probably being custom-tailored. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it, which he did when he was frustrated. I'd learned that quickly. Theodore, Julian said, his voice perfectly calm. The others are waiting. Theodore Krantz straightened, plastering on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Julian, your girl here was just getting me a drink, though I have to say, the service standards have certainly declined since Margaret retired. Julian's gaze shifted to me. I was still pressed against the wall, cradling my burned hand, trying not to cry. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Emma, take the rest of the day, he said. But the presentation, I'll handle it. His tone left no room for argument. Then he looked at Theodore, and that carefully controlled expression slipped just enough for me to see the ice beneath. Theodore, we need to talk in my office, now. But the board meeting, now. I'd never heard Julian use that voice before. Theodore Krantz seemed to shrink despite his size, all his bravado evaporating. Julian held the door open, waiting, and Theodore had no choice but to walk through it. Just before leaving, Julian glanced back at me. Get that looked at. His eyes dropped to my hand, and for just a moment, I saw something dangerous flash across his face. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I slid down the wall, finally letting the tears come. My hand felt like it was still on fire, the burn angry and weeping. I knew I should go to the medical floor, but I couldn't seem to make myself move. The broken glass glittered around me like stars, and I wondered if Julian was going to fire me. It didn't matter that Theodore Krantz was a monster. What mattered was that I'd caused a scene, disrupted an important meeting, and probably just cost the company its largest investor. I pressed my forehead against my knees and tried to breathe through the pain. The door opened again 20 minutes later. I scrambled to stand, expecting building security or maybe HR coming to escort me out. Instead, Julian walked in carrying a first aid kit. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs that hadn't been destroyed in Theodore's tantrum. "Mr. Ashford, I'm so sorry. I should have just gotten him the scotch he wanted. I didn't mean to." "Emma, sit." I sat. Julian pulled another chair close, taking my injured hand with surprising gentleness. His fingers were warm against my wrist as he examined the burn. Up close, I could see the tiny lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. He smelled like expensive cologne and coffee. "This needs a doctor," he said quietly. "It's fine. I'll stop by urgent care on my way home." "It's not fine. He burned you." There was that edge in his voice again, sharp and cold. "How long has Theodore been harassing you?" I looked away. This was the first time he actually— "How long, Emma?" "Since I started." The words came out small. "He doesn't think I should have this position. He's made that very clear, but I can handle it, I promise. I won't let it happen again. I'll be more careful." "Stop." Julian's thumb brushed across my wrist, just below the burn, so carefully it almost hurt worse than the injury. "This isn't your fault. Theodore Krantz just lost his position on our board. He also just lost his investment in this company. I've already had my lawyers draw up the buyout papers." I stared at him. "What?" "He's out. Effective immediately. But he owns 23% of— I don't care if he owned 50%. Julian's gray eyes met mine, intense and unwavering. "Nobody puts their hands on my people. Nobody." Something warm unfurled in my chest despite the pain. "He's going to sue." "Let him try." A ghost of a smile touched Julian's lips. "I've been looking for a reason to cut him loose for 2 years. Turns out, assaulting my executive assistant is exactly the breach of conduct clause I needed." He opened the first aid kit, pulling out antiseptic and gauze. His hands were steady as he cleaned the burn, though I couldn't help wincing at the sting. He murmured an apology, working as quickly as he could. "You should have told me he was bothering you," Julian said. "I thought I could handle it. Everyone already thinks I don't deserve this job." "If I came running to you for help every time someone questioned why you hired me, it would just prove them right. Everyone thinks you don't deserve this job." He looked up from wrapping my hand, one eyebrow raised. "Name one person." "Your entire executive team, for starters." "Victoria likes you." "Victoria is the only one." I sighed, watching him secure the bandage with careful precision. "The rest of them think you made a mistake, that I'm too young, too inexperienced, that you should have hired internally." Julian finished with the bandage and sat back, his gaze never leaving my face. "Do you want to know why I hired you?" "Because my resume looked good on paper?" "Because you were the only candidate who told me I was wrong." He smiled at my confused expression. "During your interview, I said we needed to expand our market share in Asia by acquiring smaller competitors. You said acquisition was a short-term solution that would ultimately dilute our brand value and that we'd be better served by developing partnerships and building infrastructure from the ground up. Then you spent 20 minutes explaining exactly how you'd do it, with projections and market analysis you'd prepared on your own time, just in case the subject came up. I remembered that interview. I'd been so nervous I'd almost talked myself out of the job. I probably shouldn't have argued with you. You absolutely should have. You were right. And you had the spine to say it to my face instead of just telling me what you thought I wanted to hear. He stood, offering me his hand. That's why you're here, Emma. Not because your resume looked good. Because you're brilliant, you're brave, and you don't back down even when you probably should. Those are exactly the qualities I need in the person standing beside me. His hand was warm and strong as he helped me to my feet. We were close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Something passed between us, electric and undeniable. Then Julian stepped back, that professional mask sliding back into place. Take the rest of the week, he said. Rest, heal, and don't even think about work. The Carlisle merger, I'll handle it. But I'm the one who's been coordinating with their team. I have all the files, all the contact information. Emma. He said my name like he was trying very hard to be patient. You're injured. You need time to recover. The merger will still be there when you get back. I wanted to argue, but the truth was my hand hurt so badly I could barely think straight. Okay, thank you. I'm having my driver take you to the hospital, then home. I want a doctor to look at that burn properly. That's really not necessary. It wasn't a request, but he said it gently with the hint of a smile that made my heart skip. Humor me. So, I let Marcus, Julian's driver, take me to the emergency room where a doctor confirmed what we already knew. Second-degree burn, keep it clean and dry, follow up in a week. The doctor gave me pain medication and a prescription for antibiotic cream, along with a lecture about workplace safety that I didn't have the energy to correct. Marcus drove me home to my tiny apartment in Queens, helped me inside despite my protests, and told me to call if I needed anything. After he left, I collapsed on my couch and finally let myself fall apart. I cried for the pain, for the humiliation, for the fear that I'd just destroyed my career. But underneath it all was something else, the memory of Julian's face when he'd seen my burn, the cold fury in his voice when he'd told Theodore they needed to talk, the gentleness of his hands as he'd bandaged my injury. Nobody puts their hands on my people, he'd said. My people. Like I belonged to him. Like I was worth protecting. I fell asleep thinking about the way he'd looked at me and trying not to wonder what it might mean. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Julian's name glowed in the darkness. It was 6:15 in the morning. Hello? My voice came out rough with sleep. Did I wake you? Julian sounded surprised. It's after 6. I usually get up at 5 to be at the office by 7. I sat up, wincing as my injured hand brushed against the pillow. But since you gave me the week off, you should be resting, not maintaining your usual schedule. A pause. I'm sorry for waking you. It's fine. Is something wrong? No, I just wanted to check on you. How's your hand? I looked down at the bandage, which I'd somehow managed not to destroy in my sleep. It hurts, but the pain medication helps. The doctor said it should heal without scarring if I keep it clean. Good. Another pause, longer this time. Theodore Krantz left the city last night. His lawyers sent over signed paperwork this morning. He won't be bothering you again. That fast? I can be very persuasive when properly motivated. Something in his tone made me shiver. Emma, I need you to promise me something. What? If anyone ever makes you feel unsafe or uncomfortable at work, you tell me immediately. I don't care who it is or what position they hold. You come to me. Julian, promise me. He'd never asked me to use his first name before. At work, it was always Mr. Ashford, maintaining that professional distance. Hearing him say my name in that low, intense voice, and then offering his own in return, felt intimate in a way I wasn't prepared for. I promise, I whispered. Thank you. I could hear relief in his voice. Now go back to sleep. Doctor's orders. Since when are you a doctor? Since I'm the one paying your salary, and I'm telling you to rest. But he was smiling. I could hear it. I'll check on you tomorrow. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, trying to process the fact that Julian Ashford had called me at 6 a.m. just to see how I was doing. It was the kind of thing a friend might do, or something more than a friend. Stop it, I told myself firmly. He's your boss. He's being kind because he feels responsible. Don't read into it. But I fell back asleep smiling anyway. Julian called every morning that week, always around 6, always with the same question. How was I feeling? Did I need anything? Was the pain manageable? On Wednesday, I found a delivery at my door, a massive fruit basket, a selection of books from my favorite authors, and a handwritten note that said simply, "Thought you might be bored. J." I ran my fingers over his handwriting, bold and confident, and tried to ignore the way my heart raced. On Thursday, Victoria called. She was Julian's VP of operations and the only executive who'd been genuinely welcoming when I'd started. "How's the hand?" she asked. "Better. I should be able to come back Monday." "About that." Victoria's voice turned serious. "You should know there's been some talk about Theodore." My stomach dropped. "What kind of talk?" "He's telling people you came on to him, and when he rejected you, you made up the assault story to get back at him. He's claiming Julian overreacted and forced him out to protect you because you two are—" She paused delicately. "Involved. That's insane. Julian and I we're not anything. He's my boss." "I know that, and Julian knows that. But Theodore has a lot of friends in this industry, and he's making noise. There's going to be scrutiny when you come back. I wanted you to be prepared." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day pacing my apartment, my mind racing. Theodore Krantz was trying to destroy my reputation, and in doing so, he was dragging Julian's name through the mud too. I should have just gotten him the stupid scotch. I should have kept my mouth shut, played along, not made waves. But then, I looked at my bandaged hand and remembered the smell of burning skin, the casual cruelty in Theodore's eyes. And I thought about Julian's face, the cold fury, the gentle way he treated my injury. Nobody puts their hands on my people. I picked up my phone and texted Julian. "We need to talk about the Theodore situation. I heard what he's saying. His response came immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I barely had time to panic about the state of my apartment before there was a knock at my door." Julian stood in the hallway in jeans and a dark sweater, looking unfairly attractive, and somehow younger without the armor of a suit. "You didn't have to come here," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "Yes, I did." He looked around my small apartment, taking in the second-hand furniture and the walls I'd painted myself because the landlord wouldn't. "Victoria told you?" "She thought I should know what I'm walking into on Monday." Julian's jaw tightened. "You're not walking into anything. I'm handling it." "How?" "Theodore has connections everywhere. He's been in this industry for 30 years. Who's going to believe me over him?" "I believe you." Julian stepped closer, his gray eyes intense. "That's all that matters." "No, it's not." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly exhausted. He's saying we're involved. That you forced him out to protect me because we're sleeping together. It makes both of us look terrible. Let him say whatever he wants. Anyone who knows me knows that's ridiculous. Is it? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Julian went very still. What? I should have backed down. Should have laughed it off, claimed I was just playing devil's advocate. But I was tired and hurt and scared, and I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel the way I did. You call me every morning, I said quietly. You sent me presents. You're standing in my apartment right now instead of sending your lawyer to handle this. If someone were looking from the outside, Julian, it wouldn't seem that ridiculous. Emma, I'm not saying Theodore is right. I'm saying he found a crack in our armor and he's exploiting it. Because there is something here, isn't there? Or am I imagining the way you look at me sometimes? Julian ran a hand through his hair. That gesture I'd learned meant he was trying to find the right words. You're not imagining it. My heart stopped. What? You're not imagining it, he repeated, meeting my eyes. But you're also my employee, and there are rules, and I'm not going to take advantage of my position just because... He stopped, jaw working. Because what? Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day you walked into my office and told me I was wrong. The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep. Because seeing you hurt made me want to destroy the man who did it. Because every morning I call you, I have to remind myself it's just to check on your recovery. Not because I need to hear your voice to start my day properly. I couldn't breathe. Julian Ashford, billionaire CEO, the man who commanded rooms full of powerful people with a single glance, was standing in my tiny apartment confessing he had feelings for me. I'm not your employee right now, I whispered. You gave me the week off, which means technically, for the next 3 days, you're not my boss. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Emma, don't what? Point out a technicality? I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. You said I was brave, that I didn't back down even when I should, so I'm not backing down now. This is a terrible idea. Probably. I reached up with my good hand, letting my fingers brush the edge of his jaw. He inhaled sharply but didn't pull away. But I'm tired of pretending. And I think you are too. For a moment, he just looked at me. Then he cupped my face with both hands and kissed me like he'd been starving for it. His lips were soft but demanding, and when I opened for him, he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat spiraling through my body. I grabbed his sweater, pulling him closer, and he wrapped an arm around my waist, lifting me slightly to deepen the kiss. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Julian pressed his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. This changes everything, he said. I know. There will be paperwork, HR procedures. We'll have to disclose the relationship, probably get you reassigned to a different department. Julian, I pulled back enough to look at him. We'll figure it out. Together. He smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Together. I like the sound of that. He kissed me again, slower this time, tender and sweet. When he pulled back, he was careful of my injured hand, cradling it gently. We still have to deal with Theodore's accusations, I said. Let me worry about Theodore. Julian's expression hardened. I've been making some calls. Turns out you're not the first assistant he's assaulted. There are 3 other women willing to come forward now that you've broken the silence. His reputation is about to get significantly worse. 3 others? Horror washed over me. He did this to 3 other women? At least 3 that we know of. All of them were too afraid to speak up because of his position and connections. Julian's thumb brushed across my cheek. But you inspired them, Emma, by standing up to him even when it hurt. You gave them the courage to do the same. I didn't stand up to him. I just wouldn't get him the expensive scotch. You set a boundary. You refused to be intimidated even when he tried to hurt you. That's the definition of standing up to someone. Julian smiled. You're braver than you think. Or maybe just stubborn. I prefer determined. He glanced at his watch and sighed. I should go. I have a conference call in an hour, and if I stay here much longer, I'm not going to want to leave. You could stay, I said, then immediately blushed. I mean, not like that. I just meant, I know what you meant. Julian kissed my forehead. But let's do this properly. When you come back on Monday, we'll go to HR together. We'll disclose the relationship and work out the logistics. Then, if you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere nice, where I can treat you the way you deserve to be treated. That sounds perfect. He kissed me one more time at the door, long and deep, leaving me dizzy and wanting more. After he left, I touched my lips, still feeling the ghost of his mouth on mine. My phone buzzed with a text, already counting the hours until Monday. Jay? I smiled and typed back, me too. Monday morning arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I dressed carefully in my best suit, checked my bandaged hand one last time, and headed to the office. Julian had texted me his schedule. We'd meet with HR at 8, then have a brief meeting with the executive team at 9 to address the Theodore situation head-on. When I walked into the building, I could feel eyes on me. Whispers followed me to the elevator. By the time I reached the executive floor, my palms were sweating. Julian was waiting in his office. He looked up when I entered, and the warmth in his eyes steadied me. How's the hand? He asked. Better. Doctor says another week and I can take the bandage off. I closed the door behind me. Everyone's staring. Let them stare. He stood, coming around his desk. We're about to give them something real to talk about anyway. The HR meeting was surprisingly straightforward. We disclosed our relationship, filled out the necessary paperwork, and agreed that I'd be reassigned to work directly with Victoria instead of reporting to Julian. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best solution to avoid any appearance of impropriety. There's one more thing, Julian said as we were finishing up. I want to make a formal complaint about Theodore Krantz on Emma's behalf. I have documentation of the assault, medical records, and witness testimony. Sarah from HR nodded, making notes. We'll file that officially, and you should know, 2 other companies have reached out about similar incidents with Mr. Krantz. There's going to be an industry-wide investigation. Good. Julian's voice was cold. He shouldn't be able to do this to anyone else. At 9, we walked into the executive conference room together. The entire leadership team was there. Victoria, who smiled at me encouragingly, Robert from finance, who looked uncomfortable, Jennifer from marketing, who was openly curious, and David from legal, who maintained his usual poker face. Julian didn't waste time. I'm sure you've all heard the rumors about Theodore Krantz's departure and the circumstances surrounding it. I want to address this directly. 3 weeks ago, Theodore Krantz assaulted Emma by burning her hand with a cigarette when she refused his inappropriate demands. I witnessed the aftermath and immediately terminated his position with this company. Any suggestion that this decision was motivated by anything other than protecting our employees from abuse is categorically false. Robert shifted in his seat. Theodore's been telling people. Theodore Krantz is a liar and an abuser. Julian cut him off. There are 3 other women who have come forward with similar allegations. His credibility is about to be destroyed, and anyone who repeats his lies is going to find themselves on the wrong side of a defamation lawsuit. The room went silent. Jennifer cleared her throat. Is it true that you and Emma are involved? Yes. Julian didn't hesitate. As of this weekend, Emma and I began a personal relationship. We've already filed the appropriate disclosure with HR, and Emma will be reassigned to work with Victoria to avoid any conflict of interest. This relationship had nothing to do with Theodore's termination, which happened days before anything personal developed between us. But even if it had, I would make the same decision. This company does not tolerate abuse, harassment, or assault. Not from investors, not from board members, not from anyone. Is that clear? Murmurs of agreement around the table. David spoke up. We support you, Julian. Both of you. Theodore Krantz has been a problem for years. It's about time someone stood up to him. Emma stood up to him, Julian corrected, looking at me with unmistakable pride. She's the brave one. I just backed her up. Victoria raised her coffee cup in a toast. To Emma, welcome to the team, officially. The others joined in, and just like that, the tension broke. We spent the next hour discussing strategy for managing the public relations aspects of Theodore's departure and the upcoming investigation. By the time the meeting ended, I felt like I could finally breathe. Julian walked me to Victoria's office afterward. How do you feel? He asked, like I just jumped off a cliff and somehow landed safely. Good. He smiled, that private smile that was just for me. Because we have dinner reservations tonight at 7. I'll pick you up at 6:30. That's assuming I survive my first day working for Victoria. You'll survive. You're brilliant, remember? He glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then brushed a quick kiss against my temple. I'll see you tonight. I watched him walk away, his shoulders straight and confident, every inch the powerful CEO. But now I knew what he looked like when he smiled just for me. I knew the sound he made when I kissed him. I knew he called me every morning, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Victoria appeared at her office door, grinning. Well, this is going to be interesting. Come on, new partner, we have a lot to discuss. Partner? You didn't think I was just going to have you as an assistant, did you? She laughed at my expression. Julian and I talked. You're wasted doing administrative work. You're going to be my VP of Strategic Development. We're going to change this company together. I followed her into her office, my mind reeling. A promotion. A relationship with the most amazing man I'd ever met. The satisfaction of watching Theodore Krantz's empire crumble under the weight of his own cruelty. A month ago, I'd been terrified I didn't deserve this job. Now I was walking into an office with my name on the door, a bandage on my hand that reminded me I was stronger than I'd known, and a dinner date with a man who looked at me like I was the most important person in his world. That evening, Julian picked me up in his car, driving himself instead of using Marcus. He'd made reservations at a restaurant I'd only read about in magazines, the kind of place where you needed to book months in advance. How did you get a table? I asked as we pulled up to the valet. I own 20% of this restaurant. He helped me out of the car, his hand warm and solid in mine. There are some advantages to being a billionaire CEO. Dinner was perfect. We talked about everything and nothing, our childhoods, our dreams, the strange path that had brought us both to this moment. Julian told me about building his company from nothing, the years of struggle and sacrifice. I told him about growing up in a small town, always knowing I wanted more, but never quite sure how to get it. You got it, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. You're here? You earned it. I got lucky. You gave me a chance. No. His thumb traced circles on my palm, careful of the healing burn. You made your own luck. You walked into that interview prepared to fight for what you wanted. You stood up to Theodore even when it cost you. You inspired other women to come forward. That's not luck, Emma. That's courage. After dinner, we walked along the river, the city lights reflecting off the water. Julian kept his arm around my shoulders, and I leaned into his warmth. "I have something for you," he said, stopping near a bench. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and my heart skipped. "Julian, it's not what you think, not yet." He smiled at my obvious relief and panic. "Open it." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm, a phoenix rising from flames. "For the bravest woman I know," Julian said softly, "who got burned and came back stronger." Tears pricked my eyes as he fastened it around my wrist, just above the bandage. "It's beautiful." "You're beautiful." He cupped my face, his gray eyes serious. "I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I need you to know. This isn't casual for me." "You're not casual for me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm falling in love with you, Emma. Have been since you told me I was wrong in that interview. And I know it's too soon to say it, but I'm not good at pretending, and I don't want to hide how I feel." "Julian," I reached up, threading my fingers through his hair. "I'm falling in love with you too." He kissed me under the city lights, and I felt like the phoenix on my bracelet, reborn from the ashes of who I'd been, stronger and braver and ready for whatever came next. 6 months later, Julian proposed on the rooftop of Ashford Enterprises. He got down on one knee in front of the entire executive team, who'd gathered for what I thought was a strategy meeting. "Emma Carter," he said, holding up a ring that caught the light like a tiny star. "You walked into my life and changed everything. You made me braver. You made me better. Will you marry me?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes." As he slipped the ring onto my finger, Victoria started applauding, and soon everyone joined in. Julian stood, pulling me into his arms, and kissed me while our colleagues cheered. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "I love you too." I looked at the ring, then up at the man who'd protected me, believed in me, and loved me for exactly who I was. Always. Later, as we celebrated with champagne and laughter, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The burn scar on my hand had faded to a thin white line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. It would probably disappear entirely someday, but I hoped it wouldn't. That scar reminded me of the day I learned I was stronger than I'd known, the day I met a man who saw my worth even when I couldn't see it myself, the day everything changed. Theodore Krantz had tried to break me with fire. Instead, he'd forged me into something unbreakable, and standing there with Julian's arm around my waist and his ring on my finger, surrounded by people who respected and valued me, I'd never felt more powerful or more loved in my entire life. The phoenix had risen, and she was never coming down. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. Thank you for watching.